Dear students, welcome to the second lecture of Strategic Human Resource Management, and we are discussing this topic in Unit 1 and a very important topic, that is impact of globalization on human resource management. And I am Dr. Tripti Barthwal, I am Director, Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management and Development Studies, Lucknow. So, in the last lecture, we had discussed that why we are talking about strategic human resource management, what is its importance, what are the principles on which it should be based, and then we also discussed the models of strategic human resource management, the principles on which SHRM should be based. Now, this concept of SHRM, it gained all the more importance when organizations started to move beyond their national territories. So, when a business expands its operations into other countries, the impact of globalization on human resource management is significant. Within a national boundary, there are several external and internal factors which impact the human resource function. But once an organization moves beyond those boundaries, then in that case the impact is more visible because these factors have a more profound and a magnified impact. Companies need to consider a diverse range of practical adjustments to be able to hire, train, retain, support a workforce that is often spread throughout several countries, which often have varying cultural identities. So, as a result of this, the impact of globalization, the onus comes on the companies to have adjustments related to, or they should have changes, flexibilities in their policies related to recruitment, selection, training and development, so that they are able to develop their workforce in such a manner which is able to handle the changes in the environment. So, we have already discussed that how without the competency of the human resource and without their commitment, even the biggest of and the best of the strategic objectives will not be achieved. So, once an organization moves across the national boundaries, then it is very important that these HR policies need to be readjusted and fine tuned. Now, so the basic theme which is underlining is that human resource managers have to devise strategies that are global in nature, that they have to be global, they have to be in tandem with the changing patterns and the changing conditions across the international arena in which they are operating, yet they have to have a local flavor, that is they have to be in line with the policies and practices of the parent organization. Now, the theoretical frameworks related to the impact of globalization. There are 4 theoretical frameworks that explore the influences on HRM across international boundaries. Now, what are these theoretical frameworks? These include cultural, second is institutional, third is universal, and the fourth is contingency. Now, we will take up these one by one. Now, first is the cultural perspective. Now, as you can see from the term itself, this has something to do with the culture of the country or to the new place in which the organization has moved on to, it has started its operations in. So, this perspective suggests that there are clear cultural differences between nationalities and these should be recognized. So, one thing is for sure that across the globe there are different countries and they have their own set of cultures. So, these we cannot just ignore them, we cannot just just think that they have no impact. Actually, they have a lot of impact. So, we have to take them into real consideration. And MNCs which accept and recognize these cultural differences in managing employees throughout HR practices will be successful in their host countries. So, any any company, any organization, any business which moves to a new country, if it ignores and if it demeans these cultural differences and thinks, oh, my practices are the best, they have been successful for so many years in my parent country, so why should I have any stress, why should I go for a change? Change may lead to lowering down of my organization's performance. So, according to the cultural perspective, this is a very, very wrong and a short-sighted approach, because if you want to manage your employees in the host country, then you have to pay respect and regard and concern to the cultural framework there. Second is the institutional perspective. Now, partly it agrees with the cultural perspective, but in part it does not. It goes for a change. Now, what does it say? It accepts that there are cultural differences. So, this also believes like the cultural perspective, yes, there are differences which cannot be overlooked, which cannot be just ignored, right, to be understood and recognized within societies. And so, you need to understand, you need to recognize these differences, and these have an impact on the HR practices, right. But what is the difference? It rejects the concept that certain practices such as recruitment and selection, performance management and reward lead to improved organizational performance, as these practices may mean different things within different societies. So, according to this approach, one should recognize cultural differences, but there are certain basic practices like recruitment selection and compensation management, reward management, performance management, which are the foundation of performance for employees and performance for organizations. And according to this perspective, these should not be changed. Other things can change according to the culture, but these are the certain basic things which need to be looked in the same way, whether an organization is operating in its own country or whether it is moving outside. Then the third is the universal perspective, and this universal perspective claims that HR practices such as performance management, recruitment and selection and reward lead to higher organizational performance. HR practices that are successful in the home country should be adopted into the host country. Now, this is a total contrast from the universalistic approach, and this is a universal perspective that whatever is successful in my country, in my home country, there are no reasons why it will not work in the other country. Once it has proven itself, when it has proven the test of time, then there is no meaning that we redesign and devise certain new strategies for a new country. That will be taking a lot of risk. So, we should have similar HR practices which we are having in our own home country. We should have similar HR practices in the other countries also. And the last is the contingency approach or the contingency perspective, which, as the name suggests, says that there is nothing right or wrong always, right. So, everything is dependent on the changes in the external and internal environment of the organization, and then according to these changes, whatever has changed from the home country to the international country or the international arena, those things need to be changed, those things need to be fine tuned, those all those factors which have changed, anything related to that in the policy needs to be changed. So, that is the contingency perspective. Then the impact of globalization on HRM, that is how, in what ways we can see, we can observe the impact, and how we should be very careful in dealing with the impact of globalization on human resource management. First is managing cultural diversity. When we move to new locations, when we move to new places, what happens that the kind of employees changes. The composition of employees changes. People in the workforce, that changes. If we are in a particular country, then in that case we will have generally almost all the employees belonging to that country. But once we move out of our country, then it is not no longer the same case. Then we will have different kinds of employees, people coming from different cultural backgrounds, speaking different languages, different attitudes, different value systems. So that it is a very challenging task for an HR manager to manage such a complicated, complex mix of employees, because here probably no one policy, no one strategy may work for all types of employees. So when an organization steps out from its home country, then it has, as I said, a mix of employees, and these employees can be broadly classified into three categories. Now, what are these three categories? The first are parent country nationals, which in short we call them as PCNs, right. Parent country nationals are people belonging to the country where the firm belongs to, or where the firm is headquartered, right. So these are the parent country nationals. So when a company is moving overseas, then there will be certain people from that country who will be moving to establish that firm. So that will be the parent country nationals. Then the second set of employees which the company will have is host country nationals. In short, we call them as HCNs. So host country nationals are employees belonging to a country where the firm or that company has started its international operations. So if a company has moved to country X, then all people who are in its workforce who belong to country X will be host country nationals. So this is also very important, because all the employees, the company will not be moving from its own country. Once it has established there, then in order to expand, etc., it will be requiring employees, and it will be taking employees who are locally available. And the third is third country nationals, which are called as TCNs. Third country nationals are that apart from the parent country nationals, the host country nationals, the people belonging to any other country which are working with that company are known as third country nationals. So for example, let's say a Tata moves overseas, they establish a unit in let's say UK, right. So all Indians working there will be parent country nationals. Then all English people, British people working there would be host country nationals, and maybe any German, American, Spanish working there will be third country national. So now you can very well understand and estimate the kind of complexity it creates in the workforce. All these people, employees will have different food preferences, they will speak different languages, they will have different festivals, customs, do's and don'ts, rights and wrongs. So there can be a lot of clashes, conflict, and it is so difficult, because otherwise machines, money, they don't have such kind of a complicated nature. But it will be very difficult for the HR department, HR managers to handle such a complicated mix of employees. So that is one very important impact of globalization on HRM, and that is why companies they develop a very strong company culture, so that people coming from diverse backgrounds, they can gel into that culture, and there is a common culture in the organization, because you must be knowing that culture is a very important asset for the organization. Once people imbibe the same culture, then it is very easy for them to make them work together, to cooperate, to coordinate with each other. So, that is the one thing. Then next is managing expatriates. Now, expatriates are those people, those employees who leave their home country to work in a company which is in a foreign land, which is in some foreign country. So, these are the expatriates. Now, why it is important? This is a very important issue in HRM, because preparing the home country employees to work in a different countries is a Herculean task, because once the employee moves over to a new country, his entire the environment will change. If he is married and his spouse is working, let's say he's in India and his spouse is working in India, now you shift him to USA. Now, what does his spouse do? Either you give her an alternative employment, or you give them a compensation accordingly, otherwise it will be a big problem. Then how do they adjust to the language, how do they adjust to the change food habits, and then if they have children, then in that case what happens to their education, how will they seek admission there. So, all these things apart from the cultural differences and the custom differences, these are very important issues. So, when a person is moved overseas, what we call them as expatriates, then a lot of time and effort is given to make them comfortable in the new assignment. If it is a very, if there is a country is such wherein people do not understand much of English, then that local language, some basics of the local language are taught to them, and the entire shifting of the furniture and household utilities, everything has to be taken care. You can't leave. It is not like a money transfer that you do it from your laptop here and it is received in America. It is a living beings movement from one place to another. So, that has to be taken care, and that is a very big issue when we are dealing with the impact of globalization on human resource management. Then the next thing is difference in the employment laws. So, across our own country, from state to state, the labor laws, they will have different clauses, they will change, the employment terms and conditions will change. So, you can well assume what happens when a person moves overseas. So, there will be different employment laws, there will be different ways of taxation, there will be differences in working hours, there will be differences in what are the benefits which the employee receives, whether these benefits are taxable, non-taxable, to what extent these benefits will be given, there will be difference in the cost of living across the two countries. So, how do we compensate the employee accordingly? So, there will be so many issues which again are of very important impact of globalization. So, within the country itself, within the country, intra-country transfer is so difficult for employees moving from one part of the country to another part of the country, and facing understanding the local regulations there. And now, when a person is changing the country itself, then it is very difficult to not keep tab with the changing employment laws. So, it is now again the HR managers part of responsibility that he or she has to see that how once a person has moved from one country to another, then how there has been a change in his or her employment status, employment laws, etc. So, the employment laws or the labor laws differ from country to country, and that is how the HR manager not only has to keep tab of what are the changes, but he also needs to, or she also needs to orient the employee accordingly, and the corresponding changes have to be made in the entries of the employee's personal file also. Then next is managing virtual employees. Now, many of the IT organizations, they have virtual teams, they have employees working from remote locations, faraway locations, connected through the net. And the last year 2020 has taught the entire world how we can function virtually and the impact of the pandemic. So, but there are several issues with virtual working also, which most of us have realized that it is not so easy to work virtually. It is not so easy to maintain. We can have communication, but it is very difficult to maintain that personal touch, a human contact with each other. And man being a social animal, he craves for relationships, he craves for the presence of people. So, virtual employees handling their motivation, keeping their morale levels high, and how to manage them, how to supervise them, that whether they are doing their things, students sitting in an online class with their videos on, the teachers do not know whether they are actually listening or they are moving around here and there, what is their status. So, similarly, when an employee is working virtually, it is many issues crop up. Once he is there in the office, you can know that for how long he has or she has been working and how long they have been whiling away the time. But it is difficult to manage in a virtual environment. So, virtual environment has its own advantages, but then it imposes a lot of challenges for HR managers. Then rise in employees' expectations. This is again a very important issue, because the internationalization of human resource management, it raises the expectations of people of a country in the form of international demonstration effect. Now, what is demonstration effect? Like for example, a parent would respect his parents before their children, right? They will show that how much they care for their grandparents, not only because of affection for their own parents or for love for their own parents, but also because they want to demonstrate to their children that it is very important to respect parents, to respect elders, so that the children also demonstrate that the same kind of regard and reverence for their own parents. So, similarly, when when somebody is told that they have to move for an international assignment, what is the picture which emerges in the mind of the employee or any other person also? That people always believe that international assignment will be a good exposure. It will give you more chances of growth, promotion. It will put you on a higher platform, and if you are the chosen one, then that means that you were performing good, and it also would involve higher compensation packages. So, this is the demonstration effect. This thing is created because of the demonstration effect, because we all believe that an international assignment is like a status, a thing of status, a thing of recognition, for appreciation for good performance. So, what happens as a result of that? The employee expectations rises, that I am good, that is why I have been given this, and the organization now has to take care of my competencies, it has to reward me accordingly. And this can be a real problem, because this can lead to misunderstandings and conflicts between the employee and the organization, because he has or she has created her own expectations on the basis of international demonstration effect. Now, these expectations may come out to be true in the longer run, or they may not come out to be true. The organization may have simply shifted them because there was somebody required with such a background in an international assignment. There was not much of merit or anything competency involved. So, then it can create a problem. Then the next thing which is again important in terms of globalization is the impact of human resource development, which includes training and development activities. And globalization, as a matter of fact, has been it has been initiated, or it occurred in such a large scale, mainly because of two reasons. One is that organizations, they wanted to explore newer markets, they wanted to increase their market share, and they wanted to increase their revenues. But other reason which facilitated this process of globalization is the technological changes that have taken place. Because of technology, it is very easy to move around and to still keep a tab, to still monitor whatever is going on in different units around the globe. So, it is very easy for the owner of the organization, the founder of the organization, to to be in touch with the CEOs of various units in the different parts of the world virtually, very easy. So, they can be connected 24/7, and in that case what happens that because of technological changes, because technological changes are coming very fast, so it leads to a lot of changes in the skills of the employees, in the working systems of the organization, in the processes of the organization, and it is then becomes very important for employees to keep abreast with those changes. So, this is again a very important impact of globalization on human resource management. So, there has to be lot of emphasis on imparting new skills through training and development to the employees. Then the last thing is, which many of us ignore and when many of us fail to consider, is repatriation. We just discussed about expatriation, that is movement of a person from his home country to an international assignment. Now, suppose this project, this assignment is for 5 years. Now, the person has to be brought back. So, this is again an important issue, because while the person is going to a new assignment, then he faces a cultural shock, because he moves to a different culture which is in contrast to his own home country culture. Now, somehow over a period of 5 years, he adjusts with that culture, he comes into terms with those cultures, but now it is time to come back. So, it is time for repatriation. So, repatriation, he faces what is called a reverse culture shock, because now his own country's culture becomes foreign to him, alien to him. So, he faces this reverse cultural shock, and this is again the duty and on the part of the responsibility of human resource management, that employees have to be prepared well in advance for their moving back to their parent country, and that is why there has to be a well thought out plan for repatriation, and this is a departure plan for the expatriate, and it holds a lot of importance, because once we had oriented him to do well in the new environment, he was doing well now, and there was a demonstration effect also. He had lot of expectations, those expectations got fulfilled. Now, once he is moved to his own country, he feels that there is loss of that reputation, there may be loss of other things, and he was in a good environment. Now, he has to come back to his home country, which he may not be very happy about. So, repatriation issues have to be handled very properly, otherwise again it leads to a lot of demotivation in the employee. So, equally as we have to have a strong expatriation plan, similarly equally strong plan we have to have for repatriation of employees. So, these are the major factors which have an impact on HRM because of globalization, and now you can very well understand how companies like Google, Amazon, which are operating in multiple countries, which have diversity of employees, and which have which keep on training their employees according to the changing conditions, how challenging it must be for such companies to handle their human resource management practices, how it must be difficult to manage their employees, as I said, that managing other systems and other resources of the organization is much more easy. Once you have a dedicated set of people, they will be able to handle all of those things for you. But if your people are not with you, if you have not been able to have the right kind of human resource management, then all those resources will go waste. So, thank you so much, and we will meet in the next session.